Welcome to the Mr Adekoya show. Today I'm here with Mr Remi Adekoya, a former UK Guardian journalist who has written for numerous international media, including Washington Post, Politico, Foreign Policy magazine. He has also provided political commentary for BBC. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
How are you doing? So, Remi, it would be great to just tell us a bit about yourself. All the accolades I gave there a minute ago was it'd be great to just give us some insight about yourself.
Well, what would you like to know?
Who is Remi Adekoya?
That's a good question. Well, I'm a journalist by background. I'm also soon going to be a political scientist. I'm just finishing a PhD in politics right now, writing on Nigeria, basically on Nigeria's founding fathers.
Oh, interesting.
That's Awolowo, Azikiwe, and Ahmadu Bello. Yeah. So that's it. So I love politics, and I plan to be saying and writing on politics for the next few years.
Okay. You mentioned Nigeria there, and when it comes to Nigeria, there is always content to write about. And the state of the insecurity of the nation at the moment is such a big issue. I think recently we had maybe 100 soldiers who got killed by Boko Haram. What are your thoughts on what the current governments are doing in terms of keeping lives and property secured?
Well, obviously the government is doing a bad job since people are being killed on such a large scale. Yeah. Recently, I think over 100 soldiers were killed. So obviously that's a disgraceful result for the government. The question, of course, is what could they be doing differently? I'm not privy to, information, military information, and what's actually going down on the ground. Yeah. I can sit here, of course, and criticize and say, they are doing terribly and all that. But as I said, I'm not really privy to what's going down there on the ground. Yeah. Definitely, soldiers should not be dying at that rate.
At that rate, yeah.
Buhari was definitely elected to ensure security in the country. Yes. One of the main reasons why people voted for him and why people like me actually supported him and wrote supportive articles about him was because we believed as a former general he would be able to bring in security into the state. And he did some. At the beginning, there were definitely significant improvements on the Boko Haram front. On other fronts, completely not. Yeah. As we know, there's crisis has been going on in the past few years, titled Fulani Headsmen crisis, but definitely violence around the country. Yeah. So definitely things are spiraling out of control, I'd say. Now, is that only Buhari's fault? I don't think so. No. There are other factors at play too. Yeah. There's, the population of the country is expanding rapidly. The country's military forces are not even enough to keep control.
Apparently about 80,000
of the territory. Yeah, Nigeria has roughly something like 100,000 soldiers. Yeah, 100,000. How can you have 100,000 soldiers trying to control a territory which is 4 times the size of the United Kingdom and holds about 200 million people? Physically, it's actually impossible. The Nigerian state de facto is being run on bluff. It's actually being run on perception still, luckily for the state. Yeah. A lot of people have that the state is actually strong. But the Nigerian state is actually very weak. If you look at the statistics on the ground, the amount of personnel they actually have to keep things under wraps, they really don't have many people,
President Buhari, when he came in, he said Boko Haram will be defeated in a couple of months. He stated this, President Obasanjo just said, Buhari's forte would be security, and he'll be able to secure lives and property of people. Recently, we saw the shooting of Shiites, another subsect of Islam, on the road of Abuja. What are your thoughts on this?
That's disgraceful, obviously, in the 21st century for any country that claims to be a democracy, and a government which is sort of walks, and claims the moral legitimacy of being an elected government, which of course it is. But at the same time, shooting civilians on the road, that's completely unacceptable. I mean, if it happened in most other countries in the world, there'd be a huge international outcry. And there'd be huge condemnation. There actually wasn't as much of that as there should have been.
No, not at all. No.
And that's one of the tragedies, I'd say, of people who live in countries like Nigeria, which I'd call is a so-called democracy, is that when disasters like that happen, the international community actually does not react as strongly as they do in countries which are ruled by, say, military dictatorships.
Yes,
you see, because if it was a military dictatorship,
there would have been an outcry.
Then there would have been an outcry that, oh my God, how can this be happening? You are slaughtering civilians. That, oh, if there was democracy there, this would not be happening. But they actually have a problem. The international community has a problem when a democratically elected government acts in this way.
Because it wasn't in any foreign papers. There was no.
It wasn't. There wasn't really much about it, because it's a democratically elected government. So they operate on that moral legitimacy of being a democratically elected government. And unfortunately, the reality is that the standards for people are so used to hearing catastrophic stories from Africa that the standards are so low. The expectations are so low. So 100, 200 people killed. Oh well, that's it. It's Africa, and obviously, if this happened anywhere in Europe or even in most Asian countries, there'd be some talk about it. So I mean, it's disgraceful. There's no other way to. We can't dance around it and call it anything else. Like I think his intervention in the southeast then to curb the rising of IPOB and all. But the way people were dealt with, protesters, civilians, etc. There's people who've been killed too, at least according to Amnesty International reports, which I would tend to believe. So I mean, the government has acted disgracefully when it comes to its human rights record has been completely appalling.
Based on what you said and based on the news, the quality of news coming out of Nigeria, how do the international community take anything as gospel truth? Because what we've noticed so far in Nigeria is, I think fake news is one of the biggest things happening in Nigeria now. There's no proper channel because most of the media houses are being paid by politicians or paid by the politician in power or paid by the opposition.
Yeah.
So what is the true source that the people on the ground would even know as true news? Because we hear that the people are being killed in the east and people are being killed in the north. The armies are on one side telling us that the Shiites were trying to stop them from moving weapons. How do we know the truth? I follow all this Twitter handle, and even I struggle to find out what the truth is.
It's a good question. Regarding the recent killings of the Shiites, which you spoke about, I mean, there were pictures of bodies actually there. I mean, I saw such pictures, which came out in in some international media. So, I mean, those pictures were there. I don't think those pictures were staged. And even the government did not claim that those pictures were staged. In that case, what they were claiming was that, not as many people as are being reported killed were killed. And that these people acted aggressively. And they were sort of defending themselves. And remember, they came out, I think, even with, I think it was the military Twitter handle, came out saying that, even President Trump had said that if people are throwing stones at soldiers, it's like shooting at soldiers, and soldiers have the right to defend themselves. So they didn't deny that this happened or that these people were killed. And neither did they deny the first Shia massacre, which happened, I think it was 2015.
2015, which 1,000 people
which reportedly up to 1,000 people were killed. Also, the government didn't deny and say, no, it's not true, these people didn't die. So we know people have died. And even one dead person is too much. So when people, for example, might be killed in the north, you might not find so many people upset about it in the south. For example, on social media.
Very true, because it doesn't affect them.
Because it doesn't affect them. People in Lagos, something, some people are killed there in the northeast, or some people are killed there in the north. Oh, well, they will just sort of, shrug it off. Not everybody, but it happens, quite a lot. And vice versa, potentially, if maybe something bad happens, in the south, there's some kind of violence. For instance, in the southeast with the Biafran, with the Pure Biafran activists, there might not be so much, not so many people in the north might be upset about it. Some might even think, the government needed to do this, actually. So
another key thing was when President Buhari was voted in, we know him as an upright and a man of so much integrity, and corruption is not something to stand for. But as far as we've been seeing lately, there's been issue of corruption raised in his government. Which, what are your thoughts on this? And how can President Buhari even curb corruption in his own government? Obviously, we know that the president might not be involved in it, but there are people that are close to him that are corrupt. How does he deal with this issue?
Well, that's a good question. I think he's given up on it. I think when he came in, he tried to signal and to sort of show that he's going to try to, curb corruption. And, then there were stories, and not just stories. I can give you, for instance, one instance. A friend of mine went to a sitting senator's house. Yeah. My friend is in the financial world, in the international financial world. Yeah. And so a well-connected man in Nigeria, said, "Oh, I need to take you to go and see one of my friends. He wants to talk to you." And my friend went with this person who took him there to a senator's house. And the senator showed him a well. And in his well, it was full of money. Wow. It essentially kept his, foreign currency there.
Inside a well.
Inside a well. And these were the first few months after Buhari took over. So there was some fear within some in the political class that, look, we don't know what this man is going to do. It seems... people were worried. Yeah, people were worried, yes, okay? Yes. Because that man kept that money in that well, and essentially what he asked of my friend was, can you help me launder this money in an international financial institution? Wow. Since you're somebody who works in international financial institutions, okay? So this kind of things were going on then in the first few months. Some of these people were worried. But after about, 1 year, 2 years, when they saw, there were no real, EFCC convictions, there was nothing really, going on, it seems we're going to be able to handle this man. And sort of, that fear does not exist anymore. And even now, even people within his own government, as we've heard, have been engaged in corruption. And I think he's basically given up on trying to even fight it, So that's where the thing stands right now. And obviously, let's not fool ourselves. Even though I supported him in 2015, I always knew that getting into bed with people like Tinubu to win a campaign, that has implications.
Yes.
Okay.
Interesting.
And this was always going to be the case. But of course, I chose to believe is the phrase I will use, that he was still going to try and do something about it, and that maybe, this is actually what I was thinking, that maybe he might even turn against those people who finance his campaign because of their corruption. I actually had a secret hope that might actually happen, but clearly that hope was completely unfounded.
It was recently reported that President Buhari stated that he sees the role of a woman in the other room. And in this day and age where women are, they're IMF chairman, and they're very key roles in terms of businesses, and they lead, Angela Merkel as well, one of the strongest economy of the world. How does that comment sit with women generally in Africa and for young girls that are growing up? How do you feel that sits with them?
Well, I doubt it sits with them well. That's a ridiculous comment. Look, I grew up, my generation, we grew up in Nigeria, which was under IBB's rule. We grew up with urban legends about the Buhari Diagbo government, which happened when we were too small to remember anything. And I remember what I used to hear then was that, that government, those people were serious. They were serious about tackling corruption. And if that government had stayed longer, Nigeria would have been good now. This is what we're brought up to, I believe that. And when he, that's why one of the reasons, why when he ran in 2015, he thought, maybe, it's something's going to happen about that. Obviously, what we had underappreciated was the fact that it was essentially Diagbo running that government on a day-to-day basis, and not Buhari. Because clearly in his 3 years there, he's shown that he completely lacks any kind of intellectual or other capacity to even envision a progressive 21st century society, much less build one. So that's, pretty much clear. There's no, like I said, we can dance around that, but that's the reality.
You talked about 21st century society build one. And we all know how economy works, the role of small SMEs, and the role of businesses, and the role of trade, international trade, and local trade. And how would you rate Buhari's government in the last couple of years? And actually, how would you rate the previous government, even Jonathan's government, comparison of Jonathan's government and President Buhari's government? How would you rate the different approach into growing the economy of a nation?
Well, I would have to say, grudgingly, I would have to say that the Jonathan's government was a much more coordinated government in terms of some kind of coherent economic policy. Okay, they did try to attract foreign investment. Obviously, they wasted a lot of money which was coming in then, from high oil prices, etc. But he had a good economic team. Ms. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, I mean, there were brains working there. Yeah. There was some kind of economic policy which they were pursuing, perhaps sometimes a little bit better, perhaps sometimes a little bit worse, but there was some kind of rationale there. The Buhari government, when they came in, started these currency controls and all this, import restrictions and all these kind of things, absolutely ridiculous, because these were things which could never work in the first place. And any year one university student will tell you that, look, this is not going to work. And all it's going to do is create opportunities for people to, black market, etc. What was going on then? Sanusi talked about it. He said, look, you can basically sit in your house, and if you have connections in the central bank, you're allocated some dollars, and then you just make a phone call, and then somebody goes and sells it, because, the dollar has become some kind of magical restricted product.
Yeah. The federal government in Nigeria right now, as I heard, are borrowing to pay salaries.
Yeah.
So, recently we took a loan from China for 386 million. And that seems the norm of the day right now for most African governments. Some African governments, like Rwanda, are borrowing to develop their economy.
Yeah.
But it seems in Nigeria it's the other way around.
Yeah.
We've seen like a state like Osun State in debt of 135 billion.
Yeah.
What is the way forward? Because this approach seems like it just spells out doom to me.
It does, I agree. And, we can talk about Nigeria, short-term and long-term. Short-term, of course, we would, focus on, 2019 elections, who would be the better candidate or which party would be the better party. Yeah. But we can also talk about Nigeria long-term. Yeah. And long-term, I think that colonial construct, which we call Nigeria today and which we grew up in, needs to be reimagined. Especially politically. Yeah. Especially politically, it needs to be reimagined. What I would imagine in the long term, a sort of solution, would be keeping Nigeria together as an economic free trade zone, such as the European Union is, but have at least 6 to 8 essentially sovereign or autonomous political units. Yeah. We can imagine some of them actually being very natural political units. So you have the Southwest, you would have the Yoruba nation, let's call it. You would have the Southeast, you would have the Igbo nation. You have the Northwest, you'd have the Hausa Fulani nation. In the Northeast, of course, there's more of a mix there, but there's a tradition there from the Borno Empire. There's a tradition of centralized state authority there too. Yeah. So I'm sure also it wouldn't be so difficult to sort of, have a political government that would be acceptable to the majority of citizens within, let's call it the Northeast political unit, not to use the word country. And then, of course, you have then the North Central and South South. Not sure if those would be able to be single political units on their own or perhaps divided into 2 each. Yeah. But, as I said, an economic free trade zone, but with independent, essentially autonomous political governments that could fashion out their own economic policies and fashion out their own political structures as they see fit. Internally generated revenue. And they'd also have their own political structures, okay? And then no Yoruba politician would be able to say, I would have brought development here, but those people in Abuja, they're not allowing us to do it. You know the people who are in charge there in Abuja, they're not allowing us to do it. That excuse would be removed from the table, okay? Likewise, no Igbo politician would be able to say, oh, well, we would have made this Igbo land a wonderful place if just not because of this, that, So at least one, it's not, there's no silver bullet. It's not a surefire solution. But at least it would remove a couple of excuses from the table. And I believe that in the long run, looking especially at Nigeria's population explosion and the way things are going out of control, like you talked about, just about 100,000 soldiers to control 200 million people. Look, sooner or later, this thing is going to get completely out of control.
I think this brings us nicely into one of my last questions is, how do you see 2019 playing out between President Atiku and President Buhari?
Yeah.
Some people say Atiku is the man. Some people say Atiku is corrupt.
Yeah.
Some people are saying Buhari is corrupt. Some people are saying Buhari is even too old to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So these are the options. Apart from the other 75 candidates, there are quite a few ones like Professor Kingsley Moghalu, there's a few candidates. How do you see 2019 playing out?
That's a tough one. If I had the result of that, I'll bet on it and probably make some money. It's a 50-50 one. It's a 50-50 one because obviously Buhari is a sitting president, which still means something in Nigeria, means quite a lot. So his party, they're still in charge of state resources and all that. So that's going to be a factor. They showed recently in Osun State that they're serious about keeping power. Okay. So, they're going to definitely go all out. Okay. I mean, it's difficult to imagine how anyone could prevent based on what's on the ground today, Tinubu from delivering that Southwest. It's difficult to imagine how anyone could prevent that. Anything is possible in politics, obviously, but today it's difficult to imagine. So, if that Southwest is delivered for APC, obviously Buhari has his stronghold in the Northwest and might win some votes also in the Northeast, even though obviously many people from Northeast will vote for Atiku also. North Central will be tricky. Obviously, Saraki is working for on the Atiku PDP side, so
Southeast.
he will be a factor. He will be a factor there. Southeast are definitely going to vote against Buhari. That one, even if you put me to run against Buhari, Southeast will vote for me. So they'll vote for anybody, ABB, anybody but Buhari. So that one is off the table. Then South, I think also generally many will vote against Buhari. Also an ABB situation. Anybody but Buhari. So Atiku is the option there. So it's tough. It's tough. Actually, I wouldn't be shocked if APC resorts to rigging. Not shocked at all. So it's a tough one, really. So it's a tough one.
What about all the other young candidates? They'll be saying not too young to run. Rise to run. There are lots of young people have actually come out recently, and I get confused with the definition of young in Nigeria. 40-year-old man.
No, of course.
But anyway, the
youth,
50-year-old men that are calling themselves young, that are running. What are your thoughts on them? There's so many of them. There's Shores there. There's Feladro Toye there. There's quite a few of them that are coming out there.
No, it's true. And I think, the good part about the fact that there are so many candidates as Obi Ezekwesili is that they raise the bar for the public debate. Okay? Because these are often very intelligent people. This Kingsley, Mugalu, etc. They raise the bar for the public debate. At least people can see, it's possible there are some good ideas around Nigeria, and we can discuss them. And it raises the bar. Obviously, these people don't have a realistic chance of, actually winning. Again, anything is possible in politics, but based on what's on the ground today, they don't have a realistic chance of winning. And I don't, for instance, see Buhari even going into a debate with any of these contestants, because they would essentially slaughter him. So from the point of view of public interest, I'd love him to go into a debate and have to defend himself. But if I was his advisor, I'll say, Mr. President, don't even think about it, because they will eat you for breakfast. So he's probably not even going to go and debate them. So it's so there is the standard of the public debate. Unfortunately, the political structures in Nigeria, or politics in Nigeria, is still structured in that way that if you don't have a huge amount of money, and these so-called structures, which we see on the way, which essentially means glorified thugs. That's basically what it comes down to. Not even glorified thugs. Essentially means having thugs, political thugs, in key areas. That's what they call structure. If you don't have that, you can't really go far.
I think talking about you kindly got into the next up, which is the issue of earnings. And which we're talking about masses. And so I think President Buhari, one of his campaign promises is to increase it to 33,000.
What's that? Minimum wage or what?
Okay. 33,000. So, but the problem is, from my knowledge of growing up in Nigeria, the more you increase salaries of workers that hardly get paid, that are owed 9 or 10 months, the prices of goods in the market go up.
Sure. The question is,
what's the point of even going with this, an increment of 33,000 and nobody even gets paid anyway? We have teachers that haven't been paid for 6 months. We have government workers. We have crazy overheads of government workers. Some are not even needed there. I just, the way I look at it, I see that, it's very, very dark view ahead in Nigeria, discussing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you ask what's the point, obviously there is a point. The point is to incentivize people to vote for him. That's the point, obviously. Whether they're going to be able to, whether the government can even afford to pay people that. And some of those other knock-on effects you talk about is a completely different issue. Yeah. But, at this kind of moment, in almost any of these governments, unfortunately in Nigeria, the only thing they're looking on is, look, how are we going to get people to vote for us? Yeah. If we have to promise that we're going to give everybody 1 million naira, we'll promise we're going to give everybody 1 million naira, and hope they believe us, or hope enough believe us to go and vote for us. I mean, that's just the reality. That's how it is.
So, Mr. Remi Adekoya, thank you so much. We can continue talking forever.
Sure.
And, I've enjoyed every time a bit of it. I'm an average follower of you on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy, listening to how you tweet. And, it's quite interesting. And to our viewers at home, thank you so much for watching. And you've heard yourself, change starts with you as well. And once you go out to vote for 2019, vote for the right candidate that will make real change for you. And, don't be swayed by the things that you'll be given. Vote for the right candidate. And thank you to meet again. God bless.